Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel, where today I'm going to walk you through how I completed path number 3 of the brand new Epoch of Pain quest. This path has the same global node and the same defenders as path 2, but you have to use cosmic and skill champs instead. One quick disclaimer before we get started: I'm not going to show you every single attempt at all of these fights. The goal of this video is really just to give you a good idea of how to play the fights, not give you an exhaustive look at all of my gameplay here. So let's go ahead and start off with this Nebula fight, and I do want to say right off the bat here that Scream is very good for this fight, but I did get very lucky with her at the start because I didn't trigger the Nullify on her auto block a single time. And you might have worse luck than me. You have a chance not to trigger it because of the Infuriate that you place on the defender when you charge your heavy attack. That reduces the chances of the Nullify triggering by 30%, so I got really lucky. If you try this fight a bunch with Scream and you don't get lucky and you're getting the Nullify all the time, the solution is just to give her the Odin buffs and then don't parry it all, and then she should work fine. Scream, by the way, is good for this entire path. She has access to the buffs needed for this fight, she has access to the buffs needed for the Adam Warlock fight, and she has plenty of debuffs to interact well with the global node as well. Really a top option for this entire path if you have her. So with this fight, again, you really just want to play around the unblockable. Once you have enough buffs, you can turn off the auto block. Scream also has access to undermine, just in case you are slower getting the buffs up, or if you accidentally nullify a few on yourself over the course of the fight. Just focus on spamming your special 1 with Scream in this and every other fight, because it's going to give you access to those fervor buffs, and that's going to increase the chances that you apply armor breaks and bleeds to bleedable champs on your basic attacks. Alright, let's quickly touch on some of the other good champions for this fight. Medusa is really good, has enough buffs to stop the auto block. You don't want to use your special 1 because you don't want to turn off your ability to apply armor breaks with that armor shattered. Gore has a ton of buffs available to him and has access to undermine. His debuffs only happen on his second medium, so maybe a little bit slower. Null is fantastic for this fight. You can use him without the Odin pre-fights and just rely on his true accuracy, or you can give him those buffs and he'll be fine. In the skill class, all of these champions are going to require the Odin pre-fights. Sable, fantastic. Elsa and Black Widow should put in some work for you as well. Alright, next up we have this NORTHSTAR fight. If you didn't catch the overview of the fight in the Path 2 video, I'll cover it again for you here. So the main deal in this fight is that you can only use your special attacks after you do a medium dash attack or immediately after you punish NORTHSTAR's special attacks or his heavy attack. And the problem here is that, as you'll see on this special 1, after his special attacks, he gains an untouchable passive for a few seconds, which makes it impossible to punish his specials unless you have a way to counter miss. And when it comes to the heavy attack, he also has the bubble shield node on him, so if you want to block bait heavy attacks, he has so many hits in his basic combo that he's almost certainly going to trigger bubble shield, and he's going to break right through your block on that 10th hit, and you're going to take a whole bunch of damage to the face here. Now with Silver Sable, she does have access to a tracking passive on her special 1, and it functions similarly to the way Ironheart's does. Now I wouldn't consider Sable as complete a counter to this fight as Ironheart, but she is one of the better options for this in the Cosmic and Skill classes. With the tracking passive, you do get the ability to punish his special attacks, which allows you to keep tempo and, more importantly, keep spacing in this fight, because one of the problems that you'll have if you are frequently unable to punish his special attacks is that you're going to find that you're going to be backed up real quickly towards your own wall, and then eventually he's just going to trigger bubble shield because you're going to be stuck blocking, and you're probably going to die here. So in this fight with Silver Sable, you want to spam your special 1 again to get good uptime of that tracking passive, but more importantly, you're going to be setting those traps. You can set up to 3 of them, and when he goes over them, it doesn't really matter, but when you go over them, you're going to give yourself a fervor passive, which are those purple icons you see on me right there, and you'll refresh them when they stack up to 3. Those fervor passives are going to give you an increased chance to apply a shock debuff on your basic attack, and again, with the Death by Debuffs global node, that's where all your damage is going to come from in this fight, is by applying shock debuffs. If your Silver Sable is awakened like mine is, you get an increased chance to apply those shock debuffs on any intercept, but you're not going to have very many opportunities to intercept in this fight because he has like built-in power efficiency, so he almost always has a special attack or is close to a bar of power. So in my experience, it was difficult to find like really good and frequent openings to intercept. So you really have to rely on those fervor passes and moving yourself over your own traps in order to keep those stacked up to 3. Now, I wouldn't consider... So one thing I would advise for you to do, not only with Silver Sable, with really any other champion who applies debuffs on their basic attacks, is to try and slow down your basic combo as much as possible. And that's something that I really failed to do on this path and on the previous path, because there is kind of like a hidden cooldown timer on the debuff damage from the global node. And if you just do like a normal speed 5-hit combo, let's say that you apply a debuff on every one of your basic attacks, not all of them are actually going to count and deal damage. So you can get a maximum of 3 if you slow your combo down the whole way. I didn't really know this or wasn't comfortable slowing it down going in, but you might have better luck. You might feel more comfortable doing so. So right there I get tagged by Bubble Shield, I think it was, and then nailed with a special 2. That sucks. Yeah, let's talk quickly about other options for this fight. In the Cosmic class, again, Null puts in a lot of work here. You don't necessarily need to use his special attacks because he does apply a Living Abyss debuff on his medium attack. You can do full 5-hit combos and then just get your openings via an intercept or hitting into his block. Scream also very good for this fight. I think she was who I used to clean this fight up with. Again, Scream very good for like this entire path. Medusa and Venom can also put in some work here. You don't really need the buffs, so you're really just relying on debuff application with either of those champs. In the skill class, I would say that Sable is probably still the best option. Elsa is really, really good for this fight. Black Widow, Deadly Origins, again, with a whole bunch of those shock debuffs, can put in a lot of quick work here. Okoye is a newer champion, has access to lots of bleeds, lots of shocks. Not all of them are actually going to apply and deal the damage, but you will have them on pretty much all of your basic attacks. And then finally, Jabari Panther, who is a champion that is not as new as Okoye. She has access to a lot of bleeds, can also do a lot of good work in this fight as well. So if you have a Sable, though, access to the tracking effect and the miss counter really makes her a top option. You don't really have to worry about class disadvantage in this fight because all the damage from the global node is a flat value, and I don't believe it's affected by class disadvantage. So, I mean, it is affected if you get hit, but as far as you dealing damage, it's not going to slow down the fight in any meaningful way here. So I think I die like right at the end here. I forget what happens. I think I might take the special 2 to the face and die when he has... Okay, so I messed up a dex or something. So died with 10% left, but you kind of get the gist for that fight. All right, moving on to fight number 3, which is Destroyer. You're really limited in the Cosmic class here, so if you have a good skill champ who applies debuffs, you're pretty much going to want to use them here. And I think I actually do get the solo here with Silver Sable. So again, in this fight, non-damaging debuffs and dexing his special 1 hits is going to reduce the amount of those destruction charges that he gets, and that's going to delay the power gain. And as I said in the previous video, the power gain in this fight kind of feels a little bit inevitable. Unless you have like a way of hard countering it, he's almost certainly going to trigger it at some point, and you're really reliant on kind of how cooperative his AI is going to be as to whether or not he's going to throw his special 1 or special 2 as he's gaining that power, or if he's going to turtle up and hold until his special 3. So it's really kind of luck of the draw there. Now with Silver Sable, all of her shock debuffs, of course, are damaging debuffs, and they won't be removing Destroyer's destruction charges. One thing that you can help yourself out with here in this fight, and for this entire path really, is to turn on the Resonate Mastery, which gives you a chance on every basic attack to apply a weakness debuff. So not only is that going to increase your survivability if you take a combo, but it's also going to give you an extra debuff to interact with the global node and potentially increase your total damage output as well. So in this fight, similar to the NORTHSTAR fight with Sable, you just want to spam your special 1, and again, you really want access to those traps so that you can continuously move over them and refresh all those fervor passes on you, because your shock debuffs, the amount that you're going to place, is really dependent on having those fervor passes on yourself. So keep spamming your special 1. Once you have all 3 traps up, you can use whatever special you want, but you're not going to gain any extra damage from the special 2. The special 3 is not really going to do anything for you either. You're probably going to have him backed up in his corner for most of the fight, similar to how I have him backed up here too. Now, if you want to intercept him, you can bait out a heavy attack. That'll give you access to a grit passive, like I just did there. I don't really find myself needing to intercept in this fight, but again, if your Sable is duped like mine is, intercepting is a way to increase your chances for a shock debuff, so you can choose to go that route here. Let's talk through some of the other good options for this fight. Again, in the Cosmic class, you're kind of hurting for good choices here. Null can do this fight, but remember that Destroyer is immune to armor break, so if you try to use your special 2, or if you convert all of your Living Abyss debuffs to armor breaks when Corruption triggers, all of your debuffs are just going to go away, which is fine because you only need them to apply, you don't really need them to stick, so Null still a pretty good option for this fight. Gore as well is not a bad option. He has a lot of buffs, but you don't really have to worry about interacting with Destroyer's protection mechanic in this fight because, again, all the damage that you're dealing is flat damage. So as long as you stick to medium combo enders with Gore, you can probably get this fight down too. In the skill class, I'm using Sable here. I think she's really good for it. Black Widow, Deadly Origins, and Okoye are also very good. Black Widow has plenty of shocks to apply. Okoye won't be able to apply her bleeds, but she will be able to apply her shocks. I talked earlier about how Scream was good for pretty much every fight in this path, and that was I'm going to make myself a liar here because Scream is actually not very good at all for this one. So Destroyer is bleed immune, he is armor break immune, so Scream actually has no way of applying debuffs to Destroyer in this fight, so she's actually like a very bad option for this fight. Sorry about that. So yeah, bring Scream, maybe Odin, maybe a good skill champ, and you should be set for the rest of the path. And that is Destroyer down. Alright, fight number 4 is a tricky one against Photon. I will cover the strategy here just in case you're watching this video before you've watched the Path 2 one. So at the start of the fight, you're going to have this permanent passive power gain on you, and you can see my power steadily increasing as the fight goes on. Now, if at any point in this fight you get to 3 bars of power, you're going to die immediately, and if you ever use all of your power and end up at 0, you're also going to die immediately. In addition, you have the Stage Fright node, so every time I use a special, you see that little yellow timer on me. If you use another special attack while that timer is active, you're going to take a bunch of degen. And the degen won't kill you outright, so you can just repeatedly do that, but it is very unsafe to do, especially against Photon. So in this fight, it's really about managing your power level, and the way that you do that is use a special attack, and then what you want to do is when you've hit like 1.5 bars of power, you want to hit into Photon's block 1 time with your light attack. That's going to trigger a petrified debuff on you, which is going to reverse your power gain. If you hit into her block twice or 3 times, you're going to get additional petrifies on you, and then the power is going to decrease too fast, and you're going to hit 0, and then you're going to die immediately there. So right there, I used a special attack, took some degen, not really a way for me to avoid that in that situation, but this fight, again, it becomes about managing your own power level, and the other big requirement here is kind of, do you know how to deal with Photon specials when she's in pure light form? Now, ideally, you want to knock her down and push her into pure light form when she's below 1 bar of power, because if you do that, then you can just kind of wait out her pure light form and you don't have to deal with her specials at all. But if you're comfortable dealing with her special 1 in pure light form, then just keep tempo, keep rhythm, and you'll be fine. Speaking of the special 1, the way to deal with it in this fight, or in any Photon fight really, is you want to block the first hit, then you want to dex out of the way of the second hit, which you can do without triggering dexterity, and then you absolutely need to parry the final hit because it's unblockable unless you parry. If she's in pure light form, do not push her to the special 2. That will be pretty much instant death here. Now, Scream is, again, very, very good for this fight because she will apply a whole bunch of armor breaks since Photon is bleed immune, and just, generally tanky champ. She has good access to the regen when she consumes Madness, which you will be doing periodically throughout this fight. That regen, by the way, is from Scream's dupe. Other good options for this fight, I keep coming back to kind of like the same champs, but they're all very good for this path in general. Null, fantastic for this fight, with a lot of debuffs applying. Medusa, again, don't use your special 1 in this fight because you don't want to stop being able to generate armor breaks. Gore will apply degens on his bleeds or shocks or poisons. Again, very good, probably a little bit slower for this fight than the other options. Sable can do this fight as well. Elsa, Black Widow, Okoye can all do this fight. Again, this fight is more about kind of learning how to play the fight than it is about picking the right champ for it. Alright, moving on to the Adam Warlock fight. Now, on the Science and Tech path, this fight can easily be a roadblock for people, but with Cosmic Champs on this path, you should have at least one that has access to enough buffs to get around the buffed up node, so very unlikely that you're going to be roadblocked here. Now, the deal with this fight, again, is that you need to heavy attack or special attack after every one of Adam Warlock specials. And now we talked about in the Science and Tech Path video about how Sentry has easy access to a heavy attack if you have him ramped up. There's no such easy mode for any of the champs on this path, so you really do need to play into the node in the way that I'm showing here. So you want to push him to the special 2, and then as he lands, you want to heavy into his pod. Now, do be aware that there is a very small chance that he can stun you when you do this. He is Sig 1 in this fight, which gives this chance to stun when you hit into his pod at about 10%. So the pod lasts long enough that if you're running like max limber, your stun should wear off before he recovers, so you should be pretty safe there. The other thing you want to do in this fight is make sure that you're spamming your special 1 with Scream or pretty much anybody else, because if Power Alternator triggers, then you're going to give him all of the power that you have stored up, and he's very likely to immediately get a special 3, and then you're probably going to die. Now again, debuffs are going to be the way you're dealing your damage in this fight, so with Scream you want to be spamming your special 1 anyways. You're going to be applying those bleeds, applying those armor breaks, just repeatedly, hit into his pod after the special 2, and once you kind of get into a rhythm with it, you'll be pretty much okay. Now, if he decides to use a special 1, don't panic. If you have a special available, just punish it and immediately use your special attack, or you can try and push him to his next special 1 and do it that way. So again, don't panic. If the Soul Barb does get on you, though, you're probably going to die because you're going to have a lot of buffs on you, and it's going to do quite a bit of damage here. So let's talk through some of the alternate options, and again, similar to the other fights that we've talked about in this video, it's a lot of the same champions, a lot of the best debuff dealing champions in the Cosmic and skill class. So for Cosmic, Medusa, very good for this fight. You can either avoid Armor Shattered, as I talked about earlier, or you can go ahead and apply it and rely on the bleeds that she gets from Armor Shattered to carry the day. Gore has plenty of buffs available to do this fight. Again, only debuffs on his medium combo ender, so maybe a little slower. Venom can do this fight, but until he ramps up his buffs, he's not going to be doing any damage, so be aware of that. Null is fantastic for this fight, but again, you need to give him the Odin pre-fights or else he's going to be doing no damage. And similar in the skill class, similar to the Nebula fight, all of the champs in the skill class require the Odin pre-fights or they will be unable to deal any damage, because even though you have that global death by debuffs node, the buffed up node kind of takes precedence, and if you don't have the buffs on you, he's not even going to take any damage from the debuffs here. So we're about to finish up this fight with Scream. This is another solo with Scream. Regen, by the way, comes in super handy if you have a duped Scream. Really, really enjoy her regen in this fight and for the other fights in this quest. Alright, here we are back again at the last fight on this path. It is one of the worst fights in this quest. We have this AEGON here. So similar to Adam Warlock, you need to heavy attack after every time he uses a special attack. The problem here is that, as you can see, AEGON has started with 1000 combo. So if he hits your block, you're going to be dead probably right away. Now, you do have a way of getting around that. If you intercept him, you get access to a reinforced passive and a bulwark passive. So the general approach in this fight is whenever you want to intercept frequently to try and keep your access to those passive effects. And then every time he uses a special attack, you want to immediately try and bait a heavy attack so that you can counter it with your own heavy. If you push him to his special 2, you can safely counter his special 2, but there's no way of punishing his special 1 with a heavy attack, so you do need to take those blocked hits. And if you were forced to bait out a heavy attack without the reinforce or the bulwark, you're probably going to die here. Make sure to use your striker also to get an opening for the heavy, so save it again if you need it for after your special attack. This is a really poor attempt. Again, I really dislike this fight. I'm playing it poorly, but I also don't really like how the fight goes, so I might actually show a 1 or 2, maybe even 3 attempts here, because I think these attempts are all pretty short here. Now, the other node that you need to worry about is the cement shoes node, which you can see, well, you could see a second ago. You'll see it again here. There's a gray icon on me with like a bear trap on it, and if you get too many of those charges, then you're going to get rooted, and getting rooted where he throws a special 1 is like really, really bad. If he throws a heavy attack or a special 2, you can pretty much dex out of the way, or you can break out with a special attack. And the way that you remove those cement shoes charges is by taking a blocked hit. So again, this fight really wants you to play heavily into intercepting and then forcibly taking blocked hits. Right there, again, I just messed up again. The Indestructible, by the way, is coming from the Null synergy, which put in quite a bit of work on this path. So it was really happy to have Null and Scream. But then, of course, I take a blocked hit anyways and die a second time. So here's my final attempt at this fight. Yeah, play into the node. There's no real way around it. You know, this one was a bit of a revive fest for me, but you know, it is what it is. That's going to do it for this video, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. I sincerely hope it was helpful for you as well. If it was, please be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss more videos. And let me know in the comments below who you used to take down path number 3. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.